Hey fellas, gonna be covering a few things today. So, looking around, try to get some of the small stuff out of the way, you know what I'm saying? I've got a grand total of 5 cards from Unlimited. That's it, guys, just 5. Just 5. 2 Black Wards, whoop-dee-dee. False Orders, one of the very small number of cards that can reassign blockers. Off the top of my head, there's False Orders, Sorrow's Path, General Jarkold, and I think there's like maybe one other card that can do it. It's not a common effect by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it's horrendously rare. Most people, when asked how many cards there are that can do that, only can think of Sorrow's Path, which is largely regarded as one of the worst cards ever printed. It's a land, it doesn't provide mana, and when you use it, it does 2 damage to every creature you control. It's just a horrible card. I mean, it's got a funky effect, don't get me wrong, but at too steep a price, you know? Psionic Blast, 2 in the blue, 4 to target creature or player, 2 to yourself. It's an interesting little spell. It would also see... You'd also see a creature with that ability called Psionic Entity that would do 4 to target creature or player and 2 to itself. And the entity itself, who I believe was like a 4/2 or a 2/2 or something silly like that. That would later see print in red. I want to say in Ravnica block. I'm not 100% certain, but yeah, we reprinted in red many, many years later. I want to say it was called Char. I'm not certain. Icy Manipulator. It was in Unlimited, Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. They took it out for Revised, but they reprinted it in Ice Age, and Ice Age was the last time it would see print for a lot of years. A lot of years. Until the original Mirrodin block came around, where it would get reprinted. And then I believe it also got reprinted in the next base set after that. I'm not 100% certain. Not 100%, you know? But anywho, let's get to 5th edition. 5th was the first time we saw what, in my mind, is a truly bad core set. I mean bad. A lot of the classic cards that people loved got pulled out. There was no Sanger Vampire, no Sarah Angel, no Shivan Dragon, no Hypnotic Spectre. I mean, so many really, really good cards were gone. Cards that people loved, gone. And a lot of people were unhappy with it. I mean, really. And yeah, it was not a set that pleased me by any stretch of the imagination. But got a few things put aside in it to talk about anyway. One of the things that you saw in 5th edition, it was the first time in a core set that you saw a large number of cards reprinted with new art. Apparently Wizards of the Coast decided they wanted to put new art on cards, but their reprint policy at the time was that the first printing of a card had to be black border. And so they were trying to rack their heads. It's like, wait a minute, does, printing it with new art count as a new card? And they weren't really certain. So actually what they ended up doing is they looked back and they realized that, I believe it was in Revised, Plateau had new art because they lost the original. So using that as a precedent, they decided to go forward and, new art for a bunch of cards. For example, here's Ashes to Ashes. I talked about this one the other day when it was reprinted, I believe in Chronicles, I think it was? I can't recall. Anyway, it's Cults and Double Blacks, the sorcery. You exile 2 non-artifact creatures. and it deals 5 damage to you. That's actually pretty saucy, especially for black at this point. We have Sengir Autocrat from Homelands reprinted. He's an interesting one. He's a 2/2. When he hits the board, you get 4/0/1 token creatures. And of course, you sacrifice all those tokens if Sengir Autocrat leaves play. What's kind of funky and interesting on that, though, they reprinted Sengir Autocrat in black. They reprinted crap, I'm trying to remember what it's called now. Breeding Pit. They reprinted Breeding Pit from Fallen Empires in this set. You know, we were both looking at cards that produce a bunch of 0/1 token creatures. And the problem, however, I saw with this is that you didn't have a lot of good sacrifice effects running around anymore. I mean, there were still some, but, you know, the really big one, Lord of the Pit, he was gone. Lord of the Pit was gone. Long gone. He wasn't even in 4th, because at that point they were deathly afraid of being labeled with the being hit with the satanic label that D&D had gotten many, many years beforehand, which some people still believe for some strange reason. But whatever, right? Frozen Shade, new illustration by Tony DiTerlizzi. Tony D. It was a very popular fantasy artist at the time. The guy had a distinctive style. Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition Planescape setting. A lot of the tone was set for it by his artwork. Also, for those who don't know, the Spiderwick Chronicles was a movie a handful of years back, based on a series of books. Tony D illustrated those books. Kid science, fun stuff. Guy's got a great style. Terror is still in print. Terror, I believe in 6th edition. I'm not 100% certain on that. I don't recall seeing Terror in 6th. But yeah, Terror is eventually going to get pulled out. Still in there. Pox gets reprinted. Now, some of you are sitting there saying, Pox? You mean like smallpox? No, not smallpox. Pox. Pox was everyone sacrifices 1/3 of their creatures, loses 1/3 of their life, and discards 1/3 of their cards in hand, each rounded up. Yeah, so now you know why smallpox is called smallpox, because it's really just a miniature version of pox. That's a nice pun, because smallpox is an actual disease. Coincidentally, I have a scar from where I got inoculated for smallpox before I went overseas. Yay. Zer's Weirding, I want to say that was originally Ice Age. I'm not 100% certain. It's a weird card, and it does funky things in, like, games where you have, like, 3, 4, 5, 6 people at the table. Oh, yeah. It's a 3 and a blue for an enchantment. Everyone plays with their hand face up. Whenever a player draws a card, any other player may pay 2 life to force the drawing player to discard that card. Yeah! Yeah, I want you guys to think about that one later and see and understand just how nutty that makes, like, games with 4, 5, 6 players turn. Unstable Mutation. Still in print. New illustration. Blah, blah, blah. New illustration from Merfolk of the Pearl Trident. Still in print. Now, here's an interesting one. Sea Sprite from Homelands. The first blue fairy ever printed. It's a 1/1 flying pro red. It's the first blue fairy ever printed. Fairies were originally in green. They did not... Homelands, the first time you saw a blue fairy, at the time you figure, okay, that's a little bit of an abomination, but whatever, you know. It's no big whoop. Then Urza's block came around, and every fairy printed was blue. And you're like, what? You know, what used to be a, you know, pretty solidly green tribe is now blue. And you're like, what? And then, of course, you know, many, many years later, Lorwyn would come out, and fairies would migrate into blue and black, which that's pretty weird. I mean, Fairies, which started out in green, today are in both of green's enemy colors. Go fig, right? Go fig. Force Spike. It's a single blue, counter a spell unless its caster pays an additional 1 colorless. That's an interesting thing to see in print in a core set. Counterspell, still in print in 5th edition. And actually will stay in print in core set for a little while longer too. It would be last reprinted in 7th edition and Mercadian Masks, if I recall correctly. So yeah, there's that. There's that. Red. Red is one of those colors that you started seeing it go downhill at this point. It would get worse as time goes on. It would get worse before it gets better, really. But yeah, they reprinted Ball Lightning, which was a very pleasant thing to see. Pyroblast replaces Red Elemental Blast. That's a more flavorful name. I can understand that. Hill Giant gets new art. In my opinion, this is probably the best piece of art Hill Giant has ever had. Fireball is still in print. Earthquake is still in print. Incinerate replaces Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt was gone, people. Lightning Bolt was gone. Would not see print again until M10. Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Wow. Stone Giant, new art. Mildly surprised he's still in print. Mons Goblin Raiders, new art. It's still a horrible card, especially by today's standards. It's red mana for a vanilla 1/1 with the creature type Goblin. That's it. These days he's totally outclassed by Raging Goblin, which is the same power toughness, same tribe. Excuse me. Oof. Same casting cost with haste. Cave People, new illustration, still a bad card. Green, we got Force of Nature with a totally new illustration. This is the original illustration for Force of Nature, so yeah, I'm not keen on the new illustration for Force of Nature. Well, the newer. I'm not sure if this is the last time he was printed or not. I can't recall. He may have been replaced with Verdant Force in 6th. I'm not certain. Wolverine pack, he's a 2/4 Rampage 2. I think this is the last time, maybe even the first time for that matter, you see Rampage printed in a core set. It's just not an intuitive ability. The creature gets +X, where X is the Rampage number for every creature that blocks it beyond the first. Not for every creature that blocks it, for everyone beyond the first. Killer Bees, still in print. It's a decent flyer. Green is not supposed to get good flyers, you know? Marsh Viper, I don't think he was reprinted in 6th. I think this may be the last time you see poison counters in a core set. Waluli Wolf, it was, if I recall correctly, it was like common in Arabian Nights. It's a rare in 5th. I believe it's also a rare in 6th. It is a horrible rare. And it's got an ability that's largely out of color. It's mostly a white ability. It's a 1/1 that you tap to give target creature +1/+1 till end of turn. Actually, at that point it is a greed ability, because it doesn't specify attacking or blocking. But it comes really close to step on White's toes. Really close. We got Seraph reprinted in white. This is a horrible condition, too. I don't know where I got this from or how, but yeah. It's a 4/4 for 6 and a white. Whenever a creature dealt damage by Seraph is put into a graveyard, dealt damage by Seraph this turn is put into a graveyard, that creature comes into play under your control. Sacrifice that creature if you lose control of Seraph. Okay, I suppose it was supposed to be a Sarah Angel replacement. It wasn't. It was too high on the mana curve for that. Another card that was supposed to be a Sarah Angel replacement was Abby Gargoyles, originally from Homeland, 2 and triple white for a 3/4 flying pro red. It's just not mana efficient. I mean, the power toughness and special ability combination, not bad, but it's no Sarah Angel. I mean, 3/4 flying pro red for 2 and double white is just nowhere near as good as 3 and double white for a 4/4 flying vigilance, Oh well. Blinking Spirit from Ice Age gets reprinted. It's a 3 and a white. You can pay 0 at any time to return it to your hand. That's not bad at all. Blinky was frequently used as a card in white and white-blue control decks. You'd return them to your hand right before you dropped a Wrath of God. Kid times, fun stuff. Banalish Hero, still in print. This 5th edition would be the last core set where you see banding. It wasn't used. It was never very popular with players. The rules for banding were a little bit on the complicated side. New players would frequently screw the rules up pretty bad. Even tournament players at times would not really know the banding rules because it was such an infrequently used ability. Let's move over here to Artifact. Skull Catapult right here, sitting on top. One of the few ways to use some of those measly token creatures that black would be producing. It's 4 colorless, 1 tap and sack a creature for 2 damage, target creature or player. Skull Catapult was okay. Winter Orb. Last printing of Winter Orb. Wizards of the Coast seriously needs to reprint Winter Orb with the old errata put on it. Hint, hint, hint. What else we see? We see the Ice Age Banelands reprinted. That was a good thing. At the very least in 5th edition we got core set reprints of probably the closest thing we're going to see to a replacement for the old dual lands until Ravnica block with the so-called shock lands. Also reprinted, we see the storage lands and the crazy sack lands from Fallen Empires. There was one for each color. Here we got the blue one, Sand Silos and Suvanite Temple. The sacrifice lands, it would come into play tapped. You could tap it for 1 mana of the specific color. In the case of Suvanite Temple, it's blue. Or you could tap and sacrifice it for 2 mana of that color. Kind of interesting. The storage lands came to play tapped. During your upkeep, during your untap, you could choose not to untap them and instead put a storage counter on them. You could then, later, you could tap it and remove any number of storage counters for a specific color of mana. In the case of Sand Silos blue, you'd get that specific color of mana equal to the number of counters you've removed from it. We also see the Urza lands reprinted in a core set, which is kind of interesting. Kind of interesting. What else we got around here? I've got 2 9th edition cards, a Shock and a Thieving Magpie. I think I traded for those. I don't have that's it. That's all my 9th edition, and I don't have any 8th. Not a bit. Not 1 card. I was mostly doing my gaming on Magic Online at that particular time, so I didn't have a lot of cards from that era, which is unfortunate. I also came across I have a small stack of 10th edition. Put a few cards aside that I want to talk about here. I'm pretty sure some of these things appeared in 9th edition, but I was just seeing them coming in 10th edition was really nice. We've got Double Strike in a core set. We've got Equipment in a core set. We've got Juggernaut back in print. It was reprinted in Mirrodin block somewhere. It was nice to see Juggernaut back in print. It really was. Sculpting Steel, we've got a copy effect. Banalish Knight, we've got Flash in the core set. That's amazing. Forbidding Watchtower, we've got Manlands in the core set. They reprinted the Cycle of Manlands from Urza's block. That is the Forbidding Watchtower, the Fairy Conclave, Treetop Village, I can't remember the other ones. I know the red one turned into like a 2/1 first striker or something like that, and the black one effectively turned into a Drudge Skeleton. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they're back in print. Painlands, Ice Age Painlands, still in print. That's nice. That's really nice. I like that. 10th was also an interesting thing. It was a return to black border in the core set. Wizards of the Coast finally decided, you know what, we've been making all these crazy rules for ourselves for no damn reason. Players like black borders because they just plain look better. And they're right. For a long time, you know, it's like, even when, for example, Lightning Bolt, even when Lightning Bolt was still in print in 4th edition, people would actually pay decent money for beta Lightning Bolts because, hey, they're black border. It looked good in black border. So there's that. I also found this right here. It's a small stack of 4th edition that was hiding in a box with the rest of this stuff. So I'm gonna have to go through that, get that filed away with the rest of the 4th edition. So that'll take me a little bit. But yeah, not a lot today, and it's all well and good, you know. And what this leaves me after I get all this squared away, what that leaves me with is 7th edition. 7th edition, as well as M's 10, 11, and 12. What do you think of that, guys? Getting near done. Getting near done. Gonna. Yeah, Cat's still hanging out over here. She'll probably be hanging out here for another couple of days, then she'll find someplace else to perch. It's just the way she does things. Alright. Have a good night, fellas. Be safe, be good, etc., etc.